listening to Covering the Field with your host, Joe Ellison.
Welcome to Covering the Field, where we analyze all sports, handicap them, and make and review predictions. I'm your host, Joe Ellison, and today we'll be covering the National Hockey League with Sean Gates and debuting a new feature to the show that we will call You Got Hosed. But we'll lead off with the NBA playoffs. And my first guest, Charles O'Loughlin. How are you doing today, Charles?
Great, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, too. In the Eastern Conference, we'll start there. We have the Atlanta Hawks in their second conference finals ever. They were swept by LeBron James in Cleveland in 2015. Not very memorable. And the Milwaukee Bucks, who are appearing for the second time in 3 years after losing to Toronto. Having finished at the bottom of their own division for the last 3 seasons, no one expected the Hawks to still be here. And they were a 4-1 underdog just to win this series. And I do believe you took the Hawks last week, did you not?
I did, and now they're minus 115.
Okay, nice. You got a decent shot. In Game 1, star Trae Young went off for 48 points and 11 assists in Atlanta's third straight Game 1 road victory. But just as in their first 2 series, the Hawks lost Game 2, being outscored 62-30 in the paint, and Young accounting for only 15 points. In Game 3, Young scored 35, but Atlanta still lost at home. It is only then that we learned Young was injured, a bone bruise on his ankle after stepping on a referee's foot, no less, and that he would be out for Game 4 last night. Charles, how did the series look to you at that point, and did you think the Hawks could win without their best player?
Yeah, it's been a really good series so far, Joe. Winning without your best player is hard, absolutely. But, you got to have faith when you take a team. Basketball is a team sport. Ball rotation is the most important thing. So if they kept the ball moving, which they did, I thought they had a great shot. They ended up pulling it off last night. So, it was good on their part.
Well, yeah, even without Young, Atlanta won by 22. But the most significant development was Milwaukee's Giannis Antetokounmpo hyperextending his knee. And if he can't go in Game 5 tomorrow, he'll be the 10th All-Star player to miss a playoff game. Charles, what have you heard about the status of Young and Giannis for tomorrow's game? And do you have a prediction?
Yeah, so far all I've heard is Young is game to game, with a bone bruise. That's usually how you are. I think Giannis is going to be out for the rest of the series. Looked pretty bad. I heard they're thinking it's a lot of damage to the ACL. So if that's the case, it's not very good.
No, that sounds really bad for Milwaukee. But lucky for you, as we mentioned earlier, you did boldly pick Atlanta to win this series. And the Hawks are 6-3 on the road in this year's playoffs, and they will be on the road in Game 5. In series tied 2-2, the Game 5 winner, to no surprise, goes on to win the series 82% of the time. So tomorrow's victor historically has a huge leg up. So Charles, will Atlanta close out the series in 6 or 7? They're at plus 115 right now. How strongly do you feel about it? And are you betting any overs or unders?
I'm staying away from the overs and unders right now. I'm really big into the future market, so I like where I got them at plus 370. I think Charles Barkley said it best last night on the NBA Aftertime show that the Milwaukee Bucks are a really good basketball team, but they don't have any killers. They don't have anybody that's going to put their foot on their throat and say, we are going to win this game. And without Giannis, that is the one guy that would do it. I've never been a fan of Giannis shooting threes, and I said that at the beginning of the series on our last podcast that if the Bucks want to win this, they have to drive into the hole. You can't have Giannis taking those shots. And he was taking those shots yesterday. It's a recipe for disaster. That's how I think the Hawks won. I think the Hawks are loose. They're feeling good. They're feeling themselves. It's in Atlanta's court right now. It's up to them.
So you're suggesting going back to the strategy of Game 2 and basically winning the game in the paint.
That's how you would have to do it if you're Milwaukee. and, of shutting them down defensively. But Atlanta has responded every time when they've had a tough game. They've always come back and responded. The Hawks are a good squad, very good squad.
Well, are you picking them in 6 or 7?
I still have respect for the Bucks, so I'm going to say 7, but it would not surprise me in 6.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I was saying fear the deer and pick the Bucks. Now at minus 135, still favored in 6. But with Giannis' status such as it is, that's going to be a super low pick, like a 1-star pick, like not advisable to even try. I think I'm going to go down to your side now and pick the Hawks. In the Western Conference, when we left off last week, the Phoenix Suns were already up over the Los Angeles Clippers 2-0. In Game 3, the Suns' Devin Booker and Chris Paul combined to shoot 10 for 40, with Booker now being guarded by Patrick Beverley and wearing a mask to protect his broken nose in that Clippers victory. In Game 4, Phoenix stuffed the Clippers just like they did my beloved Lakers in Round 1, beat them 84-80. But in Game 5, facing elimination, the Clippers went on the road with Paul George scoring 41 points. Charles, how do you assess the series so far?
It's been a good one. Very entertaining. I've enjoyed it. We'll see what happens tonight.
Do you have a prediction for tonight's game? Game 6 in L.A. tonight.
I have a lot of money on the Suns to win the championship. They were my second best future after the Nets. So I want the Suns to win when it comes to my wallet. My heart wants the Clippers to win, and I think the Clippers have a really good shot. I think the Suns shot themselves in the foot and might have just lost themselves this series. You don't go home up 3-1 and lose. When you're a championship team, when you're this team that people are talking about on sports channels now, do you copy the Suns' formula to go from worst in 4 years to being an NBA title contender? You shut the door. That's what I said our last podcast. They're in sharky waters down 2-0. Up 2-0. And the Clippers are showing you why. If you don't close the door, now you go back to L.A. for a Game 6. Let's say L.A. messes around and wins tonight, or Kawhi comes back and dominates the game. Now you're Game 7. All the confidence is in L.A. We'll see what happens.
You mentioned Kawhi Leonard. Last I checked, he was not even sitting with his teammates on the bench during the games as he's out with his injury. Would you say that's a pretty strong sign that he's not coming back? And have you heard anything about that?
I've heard mixed reviews on the Kawhi situation. Kawhi's, I think, the best player in the league, and I've been a fan of Kawhi since he came in. Back when, I want to say it was 2013, early 2010s, him and LeBron played each other in the finals, and he stuffed LeBron when LeBron went up for the dunk, and I was amazed, and I've followed the kid ever since. And if you followed his career, followed the person he is, he's a very unique person. He's very different, very strange. So people want to make a big deal of it, him not being on the court and being in the box or not traveling with the team. That's just the person he is. So we'll see what happens.
So you're thinking he just might come back then. It doesn't really mean anything.
I mean, he wanted to be in L.A. He had his choice to go anywhere when he was leaving Toronto. So you want to stay in L.A., you're going to go play with LeBron James? I don't think that's his type.
Okay. Well, Chris Paul for the Suns is shooting 19 for 60 in this series. Has he mentioned anything about his recent battle with COVID possibly affecting his recent play?
I have not heard anything. Would not surprise me. It also could be because coming back, he's a little rusty. If he did have COVID, the people have had trouble coming back from it. So,
okay. Well, as we stand now, the Clippers, are trying to do some historic things. Never has a team come back from being down 1-0 in 3 series, let alone 2-0, which is what the Clippers are trying to do. But the Clips have some good numbers on their side. They're 3-0 this year when facing elimination, and Coach Tyronn Lue is 10-2 in elimination games. It seems obviously, Paul George will have to lead the way. He scored at least 20 points in all 18 playoff games. Do you see the Clips winning games 5 through 7 and right now at plus 425 to win the series and advancing to the finals?
I can see it. It is a possibility. Like I said, I want the Suns to win when it comes to my bankroll for sure. But when it comes to my heart, I want the Clips to win. I think the Suns lost their opportunity. I think when you give great players, a great team, a chance to breathe, they can take with that and run, And that's what scares me about the Suns. They're young, Even if Milwaukee makes it in, if the Hawks make it in, can the Suns close the door? That's always been my big thing with them. Never was a huge fan of the Lakers this year. Thought the Nuggets weren't that good of a squad without Murray, and it's almost the hand you draw. I've seen some teams make it to championships. I've seen some teams get really hot because they just draw the right hands in the playoff. And I would say it's the Suns this year. And now it shows you when they're playing the team that really can fight, they're having trouble closing the door.
Well, okay, the Booker has ditched the mask last I checked, and he scored 31 points in Game 5. Do you see any relevance to that, playing better without the mask?
I think it might just be a comfort thing, nothing. But who am I to say? I've never shot a basketball with a mask on, so
Or with a broken nose, probably.
Absolutely not.
No. It's, well, we'll see. I picked Phoenix in 6 before the series started.
So do you still have them going to L.A. and winning tonight?
I do. Now they're at minus 550. I'm going to stick with it. I don't see any reason to change my mind now. I'm not particularly thrilled about it. Maybe like a 5-star pick, not a 10-star pick. But I do like the Suns' chances. I think, like you said, they did let up. I've seen hockey teams do the same thing. They get up 3-1, they come home, then they blow it, but then they refocus in Game 6 and do what they should have done in Game 5. And that's, win the game. And I'm not sure if I asked you this, but who do you have actually winning the championship?
Whoever comes out of the West. That's always been my thing this year. I've never been a fan of the East other than the Nets. And once the Nets fell, it's who comes out of the West. And like I said, the Clippers still have a really good shot at this. So I don't think you can go against them. A few weeks ago, I was laying in bed and I was just thinking to myself, I said, should I just throw every cent I have on the Clips right now? Is this about to be one of those magical years where Kawhi comes back 0-2 in every series he's in and just wins the chip? Seen him do it before, and Paul George, a lot of people can say what they want about him in the playoffs. This guy used to go rounds with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Ray Allen, that Miami Heat squad back when he was Indiana Pacer. So, the kid can play.
Okay, well, I'm on that side too. You're hesitant to pick between Phoenix and the Clippers right now, but I like this Phoenix team, obviously. I'm going to pick them. The team mainly built through the draft, which I like. Not a bunch of superstars just put together. They're relatively healthy. And they beat my Lakers.
Yeah, building through the draft in the NBA is a very, very hard process because the game doesn't translate like other games do from college to the pros. So it's a very different transition. Going through the draft is a very difficult process.
Well, I have no reason to change my mind. Sticking with the Suns to win their first ever world title. So thank you there, Charles. But like everyone else, Your bets sometimes can be good, and sometimes they can be bad. And although in the Bible it says money is the root of all evil, nothing can stop you from going to church and lighting a candle for your betting tickets. But whether it's fate or bad luck, sometimes the betting gods will put a ticket in your hands that appears to be a sure thing, then suddenly things go horribly wrong. With some people possessing the ability to show sympathy and others deriving pleasure from other people's misery, we now introduce a brand new feature to the show that we will affectionately call You Got Hosed. So Charles, you will have the honor of being the first to share a betting story of how you were sure you were holding on to a winner, but in the end, you got hosed.
I'll give you two. You know, I said I'm big into the future market. After the Brooklyn Nets lost, I've got the Phoenix Suns probably about 10 games into the year. I got them 40-1, got them to 20-1, got them at 12-1, got them at 5.5-1. You know, you throw a good chunk of change when you get those bigger numbers and you see how they're coming along. So if they don't pull this off, I'll be very upset with that because I'll be walking away as a loser in this futures market in the NBA. Other than that, and that just goes to show you how much confidence I've lost in these Suns because you got to close that door. You can't give a team like the Clips a chance to breathe. And that leads into my most recent bet, which I'm going to call a bad beat. I had the Suns. It opened up at minus 5.5. I went there maybe an hour before the game, 30 minutes before the game. I got it at 6.5. I said, man, these Suns need to punch the Clips in the mouth. If they are who we think they are, if they are the championship team, if they're the team that's going to be contending 1-2 seed, be the guys the West has to go through the next 4 or 5 years, they have to close the door. And they lost by 12, 14 points that game. So plus my minus 6.5, I lost by 21.5 points. That's a pretty bad beat because, like I said, when you claim to be this, you have to be this. I think you put LeBron in that situation. You put Kevin Durant. You put the Splash Brothers. You put, God rest his soul, Kobe Bryant in there. They closed the door. So we'll see what happens. I'm losing a lot of faith in these Suns. We'll see.
Well, I guess looking at it from that point, yes, Charles, I guess you really got hosed on that one. But I thank you, Charles, for that horrible story. And hopefully your future predictions do much better. And maybe we can get you back on the show again next week.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate having you.
Okay. Well, yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was Charles O'Loughlin. We now turn our attentions to the National Hockey League in the quest for the greatest trophy in North American team sports, the Stanley Cup. This year, like every year, the playoffs have already been amazing. On our ongoing tally, out of 75 games, 41 have been decided by one goal, and 26 have gone to overtime with 32 overtime periods. And we're not done yet. When last we checked, a week ago, the heavy underdog Montreal Canadiens were leading the Vegas Golden Knights 3-2 in the semifinals. I got my wish when Vegas then turned to Robin Lehner in goal, but it just didn't matter as Montreal won Game 3. And when we last checked a week ago, the heavy underdog Montreal Canadiens were leading the Vegas Golden Knights 3-2 in the semifinals. I got my wish when Vegas then turned to Robin Lehner in goal, but it just didn't matter as Montreal won 3-2 in overtime to clinch the series. The Canadiens held Vegas to 9 goals in games 2 through 6 and didn't allow a power play goal in 17 opportunities. So now I'd like to introduce my hockey expert, Sean Gates. First of all, how are you doing today, Sean?
I'm very well, Joe. Thank you.
So tell me, Sean, how do you think Montreal pulled off this huge upset?
Well, they were hitting and knocking Vegas off their speed, their game plan. I just loved the way that they were hitting in that game. They're finishing checks. When I say hitting, I'm talking about not actual. When the opponent hitting is when you hit the body and you check them. Finishing a check is when an opponent has the puck and they pass it off, and you don't go after the puck. You finish and hit the person with the puck. Those are finishing checks. Now you got to do it within a certain time frame, and all hockey players know when that time frame is. or it could be interference or roughing if you do it a little too late. But yeah, I just think that they knocked Vegas off their game plan very well, just the same way Vegas did to Colorado. Exact same thing.
Well, before the series started, no one picked Montreal. But last week, we both chose the Canadiens to close it out in 6, so hey, at least we got that part right. In the other semifinal series, the Tampa Bay Lightning were leading the New York Islanders 3-2, with Game 6 potentially being the final game played ever at New York's Nassau Coliseum. The Lightning's Nikita Kucherov was hurt on a cross-check that the referees didn't see or call, and he was sorely missed, especially on the power play where he excels. The Islanders extended the series with a 3-2 overtime victory, setting off a wild celebration that had fans raining down plastic beer bottles on the ice. So, Sean, what did you think of Game 6?
Very entertaining. That was pretty much what the hockey playoffs are about. Real close, real tight. Both goalies playing very well. In my eyes, that game came down to the coach.
Barry
Trotz. He was changing those lines up in the overtime and very, very fast line changes. And that's why I believe that's how they won it.
Well, he's my favorite coach, so, I'm glad to hear you say that.
I think that he should be the best coach, best coach for playoffs.
Okay. Best coach of the playoffs. Yes, he
Correct.
took the Islanders one game away from the finals.
Yes.
So what do you think would have happened had New York lost that game, let's say, on a controversial call?
They probably would have burned down the Coliseum, I would think. If they would do what they did with them winning the way they did it, I would think that it would have been terrible.
Yeah, New York must be a tough place to live. Fans are pretty tough.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I can't say I've been there. But yeah, that was crazy. But I thoroughly enjoyed the celebration. No one really got hurt, and that's the most important part.
Thank God.
Yes. So that set up the best 2 words in all of sports, Game 7 in Tampa Bay. And the Lightning also had the advantage with goaltender Andrei Vasilevsky being a perfect 12-0 after a playoff loss. Well, you can make that 13-0 now, as the Lightning shut down the Islanders 1-0. New York had not given up a shorthanded goal all season, but picked a rotten time to do so in losing the series. So, Sean, what won that game in the series for Tampa Bay?
Just Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay in that 7th game was how I would thought they would have played in the 6th game. They were just much more powerful, much more. Their passes were a lot more crisper. They were just a better team. They were the team that should have won, and that's why I figured it would be Montreal and Tampa Bay in the Stanley Cup. For those reasons, because they are the better team.
Well, it was a great run for the Islanders, and now they get to open a new arena next year, which is already sold out, believe it or not. Unfortunately, my 35-1 bet on New York to win the Cup fizzled away, but
They'll be back next year, I guarantee you.
I will bet them again.
Yes.
They opened at 20-1, and for some reason, just kept going up. I kept betting them, but Sean and I both had picked the heavily favored Lightning to advance to the final, and so I guess we did okay podcast-wise, just maybe not so much sportsbook-wise. But so now in the finals, the defending champion Lightning were a big favorite again at minus 280 to win the Stanley Cup. But I don't know. I think the more interesting story by far is Montreal. This is the Canadiens' 35th trip to the finals, of which they've won 24 cups. But perhaps this one is the most unlikely run. Montreal was the 18th best team during the regular season, and they have gone through 3 coaches this year. Claude Julien was fired in February, and Dominique Ducharme tested positive for COVID 2 weeks ago, leaving Luke Richardson in charge. However, Ducharme is expected back for Game 3. Of course, this is supposed to be good for hockey to have a Canadian team in the finals. Montreal was the last one to win it all in 1993. Vancouver lost to my beloved Boston Bruins in 2011. But many Canadian people don't even consider Montreal and its province of Quebec to be Canadian. Quebec has its own government, and French is its official language. But I've grown to like this team and its blend of old and young players, being an Original Six club. And even though I'm a hated Bruins fan, I'm finding myself now rooting for the Canadiens.
Wow.
How about you,
Big.
Sean?
Yeah, that's pretty big for Joe.
I know, I hate the Canadiens,
Yeah.
but I'm growing to dislike the Lightning even more.
Wow.
I like the underdog story.
I do too. I really do. But as far as, game one went, Tampa Bay, they were to me it was two different teams. In the first two periods, Montreal, even though when Cernak scored that first goal, that didn't worry me that much. In the first period, I still thought Montreal still had a great shot. They were still playing very well. They were finishing checks. They were hitting. They were passing. And then when we got into the third period, we got to a 3-1 off of a goal. Was it Point? Who scored that goal?
Well, I can't remember who scored it exactly, but they came pretty fast and furious at that point.
When that goal happened in the second, I felt that the momentum changed. Just like when Vegas Fleury threw that puck out in front of the net, and that changed the momentum. I felt that was the momentum changer for that particular game right there. In the third period, Montreal did not play Montreal style at all. Tampa Bay controlled everything. They showed you why Montreal was a 4 seed and not a 1 seed. They controlled the offensive zone, they controlled the neutral zone, and they controlled the defensive zone. And if you're watching that game, Montreal was getting so frustrated after the whistle. Tampa Bay was slashing them, just knocking them off their game plan. And if Montreal is going to win this next game, they need to be more disciplined and play their game. If Tampa Bay keeps rattling them, Tampa Bay is going to win in 5. But I don't see that happening. I really believe that Montreal is going to come back and show us why Montreal is in the playoffs or in the Stanley Cup.
Well, when that line came out with the Lightning minus 280 for the finals, what were you thinking, and which way were you leaning?
Oh, I still think Montreal is going to win. We've seen it in the other series as well, where they're just not consistent. That's why they're a 4 seed and not a 1 seed. They can show signs of being one of the top greatest teams, but they're not consistent enough. I also think that Tampa Bay had a very big home ice advantage.
Well, if you were to bet Montreal right now, they're plus 500, having lost game 1.
I would take that.
And that's pretty good odds.
If they split, that's how I thought there was going to be. It was going to be a split in Tampa Bay. Then Montreal is going to go back and win 2 in a row. I figured Montreal is going to win 2 in a row somewhere, and it is very hard to go into that place of Montreal and pull out those wins if Montreal is playing like they did in the first and second period. And then I figured they'd probably lose the next game coming back to Tampa Bay and then win it in Game 6. That's how I saw it. I still see it that way. I'm just not as confident. Because if they come out tonight and play like they did the last game in the third period, it's over.
Well, obviously they can play better. After going down 3-1 to Toronto, Montreal is now 11-3 since then in the playoffs. They're 10-2. There are some keys. They're 10-2 overall when scoring first, and a perfect 11-0 when scoring 2 goals. Only 2 goals. Unfortunately for the Canadiens in that game 1, they didn't score first, and they didn't score 2 goals. And their streak of 32 straight successful penalty kills also ended. And yeah, although the score was 2-1 early in the third, standout Montreal goalie Carey Price in his first finals then gave up those 3 goals. Unfortunately, in his last 5 games versus Tampa Bay, he's 0-5 with a goals against average close to 4. Is it possible the Canadians are overmatched here, or should we just throw game one out the window?
I wouldn't throw game one out the window. Are they overly matched? I don't think so, no. They just have to be disciplined. If they play the Montreal style of play, if they would just be disciplined, hard-hitting checks. That last game, there was 115 hits, 58 by Montreal and 57 by Tampa Bay. So it was very physical. That's why I brought up finishing checks. When the player passes the puck, still hit them. It takes it takes their breath away. You get hit several times in a game, you get tired, you're not going to be, skating as fast, not thinking as great. And I don't know, maybe that's just a little too old school.
No, that works. And that's how St. Louis beat Boston a couple of years ago, unfortunately, was basically beating them up. So you think that the amount of hitting favors Montreal?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the good news for Montreal fans, 3 out of the last 4 times they lost game one in the finals, they went on to become champions. If that is to happen again, Sean, does it make it a must-win game 2 tonight?
Yes, it does. They have to split. They have to split tonight. I don't see them winning 3 in a row, and that's what they would have.
Well, they would have to win 4 out of
4
5
or 5
if they were to lose tonight.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'll be hoping for Montreal, but realistically, I've got to pick Tampa Bay. Just telling people, obviously they are the favorite. They are way too high at minus 700 to win it all. They're not a good bet. The experience from last year, they're actually bigger that I noticed than Montreal.
Now, out of the 4 sports, basketball, football, hockey, baseball, I think home ice means the very least in hockey as it is in any other sports. Now, with that being said, I also think Tampa Bay had a very, very high home ice advantage on that first game. You got to remember, they were in the bubble last year when they won the Stanley Cup, so there was no fans. So now that they have a chance to have the Stanley Cup game 1, it was kind of a hostile environment for them. It really disappointed that Montreal didn't play it better than what they did. But the first 2 periods were great. That third period was just, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what happened.
It was disappointing,
It
for
was
sure.
disappointing, yes.
Well, I hope I'm wrong, but I can't pick against the Lightning. But it would be great to see the series last 6 games at least. So, Sean, being a sportsbook manager, I know you're not allowed to place bets, but surely you must have witnessed a customer who was super confident in a positive direction of one of his wagers, but then had the rug pulled out from under him and ended up losing. Could you please share a story without naming names and add to our new feature, You Got Host?
Well, I did have a customer that did bet on Rom to win the Memorial Golf Tournament. Now, he doesn't bet for the person to win. He bets these matchups, and what a matchup is instead of playing, let's just say, Spieth against the field, you can go up against matchups. So you could have Spieth playing Koepka or Rahm, and at the time, in that tournament, the Memorial Tournament, Rahm had a test positive COVID.
Yes, he was leading. He was leading the final, going into the final round, by 6 shots.
By 6 shots, right?
When he was told at the end of the 3rd round that he would be unable to play anymore after testing positive.
Now, he was so far ahead. He was 16 strokes ahead of the guy that he was playing. And I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't remember who that matchup
On that
was.
matchup, right.
But he was 16 strokes ahead at the time when he had to leave. So I would say that was a very, very bad beat for the guy.
I think I'd have to agree with you. Going 16 shots up, there's no way he was going to lose that bet. So that guy, I agree with you, was very badly hosed. But
That's sports.
that's sports.
Now, how about Joe? What was your you got host story?
Well, unfortunately, last weekend I bet Kyle Larson to win both Pocono races. Larson, he'd been on fire. He just won 4 consecutive races. He won the All-Star race, Charlotte, won on a road course, Sonoma. He won a 1.5-mile track, Texas. He won at Nashville on a track nobody's ever raced on before. Didn't matter where, Larson was just winning. Last Saturday, he starts on the pole. Easy money, right? Grabs the lead late. He's ahead by 3 seconds or so. I got my pen in my hand, ready to write down the results on my sheet. Very last turn of the final lap, he blows a tire, hits the wall a few times, and finishes 9th. Cost me the win and a 2-teamer on the driver matchups. Oh, but there's more. The next day, same track, Larson has to go to a backup car because of damage, so he's forced to start last. But I bet him anyway, because if he wins and I don't have a bet on him, I'm hosing myself. Naturally, battles all day, finishes 2nd. By all rights, Larson should have won both races. And I didn't bet him in any of those 4 races before it that he won. So yeah, I feel I got completely hosed.
I would say so, yes.
So our producer will decide the winner of our You Got Hosed competition, and that story will go up against next week's winner. And I'm getting a signal from my producer right now. The winner is...
Well, first, Joe, I got to say all 3 stories, man, those are all you got hosed. That sucks. But I got to be honest, I got to go with the blown out the tire coming around the final turn, last lap. You can see the finish line. You got it in the bag. You're smiling. You're celebrating already in your head, and your tire blows. And there goes your race. There goes all day you just spent in a car, probably hot, and you lose. So that's the winner for this week.
Oh, well, thank you. I thank the producer. I'm the winner of the first week. We shall see next week. But these stories can be from this week. They can be a month ago. They could be a year ago. They could be somebody else's story. So we will have another week to come up with a new winner. So that about wraps up the show. A couple final predictions before we go. We've got 5-time and defending champion Novak Djokovic. I'm giving out as a 9-star selection to win the men's side at Wimbledon. I don't believe in 10-star selections because that would be like saying it's a lock, and there's no such thing as an LOCK. I don't even like to say the word. So it's a 9-star selection. And he will also complete the Grand Slam at the U.S. Open in September. And another easy money, if you can find odds still, today Pogacar will win the Tour de France, another 9-star pick. So that's it for this week. I'd like to thank my guests Charles O'Loughlin and Sean Gates, and everyone for listening. Hopefully you all enjoyed the show, and you'll hear us again next week on another episode of Covering the Field.
You've been listening to Covering the Field with your host, Joe Ellison, a CM World Services and the Sage production.